Greetings, citizens! You're now trapped in the Nerd Cage with your hosts Mark and Jay. We hope you have a smashing good time.
Yes, hello and welcome. That's right, you're trapped in NerdCage Live. This ain't just a reaction show, but a debate show and a live discussion on everything that makes people like you and I tick. So thank you for joining us tonight. I am your co-host, Jay St. G, coming to you live from Syracuse, New York, and always with me, my man, the Fiend from Louisville, Mark. What's shaking, boss?
Hey, what's going on, man? Super excited to be here as usual, but I am more than excited because this week we got some phenomenal news. I'm sure that a lot of people out there have heard that, but in case you haven't, Michael Keaton, the original cinematic Batman from 1989, is actually in talks with Warner Brothers as we speak to revise his role to be in the new Flash movie, which I think is it's a dream for a lot of people.
I did not believe you. I thought it was a joke. You messaged me. You were the first to tell me I was at work. You told me. And honest to God, I did not believe. I'm like, oh, come on. Like, I'm just saying it sounds like a fan rumor. And then I went onto the internet and the internet was broken.
Yep.
Every legit site, Variety, Hollywood Reporter, Superhero Hype, everybody was breaking the news. And I'm like, oh my God, it's actually for real.
Right. And the story, like, it originally broke in the Wrap, I think.
Yeah.
And I wasn't super familiar with that as a trade. And so, I don't know if you remember, I messaged you. I was like, is the Wrap for real? Are they like a rumor site? Are they for real? But then a few minutes later, the Hollywood Reporter started reporting it, Deadline, Variety, everyone. And so, it's almost too good to be true in a way.
And then the funny thing is, again, we are John Campea fans here, and
yes,
he was planning on taking hiatus, and all of a sudden, when this news broke, he put up a video.
Right.
So it's just and then every single entertainment talk site, from Beyond the Trailer and Popcorn to Planet, IGN, everybody. I'm like, all right, I couldn't wait to listen to what they all had to say, so that way we can chime in to talk about what no one else is talking about. And for starters, the thing I'm shocked about is Michael Keaton has been pretty vocal, especially in the 90s. He was very vocal about how he did not enjoy playing Batman.
Right.
He hated it. He hated the suit. He refused to come back for Batman Forever. He clearly didn't enjoy himself, especially in Batman Returns. And then if you're familiar with the movie Birdman, which is great, by the way.
That was a great movie.
I almost cried when he didn't win the Oscar for that. But the Birdman clearly was making fun of his opinion on Batman and how he felt about it.
Right.
And I'm just baffled that more than 30 years later, after all the stuff about what he said about the role and how rough it was for him, and now all of a sudden he wants to. That he's possibly in talks of coming back. It makes me scratch my head a little bit.
Right, and I'm with you with that. So that was one of the things that I did think about when I first read that initial article, because I do remember Birdman coming out in 2014, and he absolutely, I sort of looked at that as him skewering his past as far as playing Bruce Wayne / Batman. Yeah. But when I thought about it, I started thinking about, well, what would be the reasons for him to be, to be so against playing this character? What would the experience have been like? It must have not so much been the overall, experience of just playing this character, because he put so much into that character that I think other actors have then taken and kind of run with to make their own version of Batman.
Yeah.
Voice, for example, the two different voices, that was 100% his idea. He approached Tim Burton one day and said, I think there's a dichotomy between the, Bruce Wayne's personality and Batman. And so I think that I should give Bruce Wayne a completely different voice than Batman. That was all him. And everybody that's come after him has like kind of done that. So,
not George Clooney.
Well, not George Clooney. I feel like that dude kind of just phoned it in.
Yeah.
But everybody that's kind of taken the role
like what
seriously.
they did with Ben Affleck's version, where he had a voice changer,
right?
That was brilliant.
Right, that was brilliant. But getting back to the idea of why he might not have liked, playing Batman over time, I think it might have had more to do with the experiences behind the scenes, right?
Yeah.
So with those first two Batman movies, actually, I think with that first run, that first franchise, you had a guy that was in place as far as one of the producers named John Peters. And that guy is notorious. You hear stories about him all the time about him coming in and kind of interfering with the original concept of a project, kind of insisting on certain things happening. And so I could see that wearing on an actor or a director. Yeah. And that would explain a lot to me as far as why Michael Keaton would leave after the second one, why Tim Burton would not want to have anything to do with the third and fourth movies. And so, when I think about that, then it makes perfect sense for him to not be averse to returning to the role if players like that were not in place. You have Andy Muschietti, developing this Flash movie, and he, for all we know, the people that are in place, he might feel a lot more comfortable with, and he might say, okay, look, let's give this thing another shot.
And I think another thing too, to add to everything we were saying earlier, was obviously the Arrowverse and the Crisis on Infinite Earths.
Right.
Obviously, I think that was DC's way of testing the waters to see how people would react to multiple Batman, multiple Superman, this, and that.
Okay.
And they're thinking, I didn't watch it, but I know you had your opinions on it.
We'll sort of leave those,
Yeah. But the thing is, the general consensus that people were excited and people enjoyed it. And now DC's and Warner Bros. Is like, okay, well, we'll see how this turns out in the movies. My question is, if they're adopting the Flashpoint, does this eliminate Jeffrey Dean Morgan as Thomas Wayne? Because that were the hints that we were getting since the Snyderverse started. And now if Michael Keaton's coming in to play his version of Batman again, does that exonerate, does that get rid of Jeffrey Dean Morgan possibly coming in?
Well, we don't know. We really don't know in what capacity Michael Keaton is going to be returning to this role, right? So in the initial article in the Wrap, what they specifically said is that he's number one, they said that it's a very early phase of talks, so it could go either way. It might work out, it might not work out.
And if he does take the role, he's probably gonna make more money now than he did 30 years ago.
Correct, yeah. But money aside, we don't know which Batman it's going to be. We don't know that if it's Bruce Wayne. We don't know if it's Thomas Wayne. We don't know if it's an alternate Earth Batman. We don't know if it's Owlman. We don't know. All we know is that he's returning to the role, and so everything else that we've heard aside from that, he's playing Thomas Wayne, or he's going to play a mentor to the other heroes in future movies, all of that is speculation at this point. We don't know how big of a role this even is. It could be kind of, you mentioned Crisis. Everybody was super excited when we heard that Kevin Conroy was going to be playing a live action Batman after being the voice of Batman in the animated movies for so long. But then we get to that scene that he's in, and it's literally just one scene. And so, for all we know, it could just be a short cameo like that. He might have a major role. He may not. And so until we hear more, it's kind of difficult to kind of speculate as far as, what it means for Flashpoint, and what it means for possibly having Jeffrey Dean Morgan in the mix. Personally, I'd love to see him as Thomas Wayne.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I think, that's Talk about somebody.
I think
who could
he's
really
a
knock
better
it out of the
actor
park.
than just the Walking Dead guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was a huge fan. Well, I'm a little biased because I'm into kaiju and video games, but man, in Rampage, he was really good.
Right.
Very underrated movie.
Sure.
But yeah, he's done good work, and I think as far as Thomas Wayne goes, I think he nailed it out of the park. He's perfect for it.
Sure. I mean,
I think Zack Snyder was. I know it was brief, but Zack Snyder was onto something when he picked him for that very brief intro for Batman vs Superman.
right. Do you think that he had Flashpoint in mind when he did the casting?
Maybe. I want to say yes, because I mean I think they had a huge story arc in place at the time.
Right.
So and obviously fan demand is high. So
Sure. Yeah, maybe huge fan service, right? So
absolutely. Now here's what's really funny is obviously the internet being the internet. The funniest thing I saw was the Oprah meme, where Oprah was like, "Everybody gets a Batman," because we got Ben Affleck, doing Justice League, the Snyder Cut, and then we have Rob Pattinson, and now the possibility of a Michael Keaton. Now my main question is, this is the one thing that no one's talking about. Do you remember when they first announced the Joaquin Phoenix Joker? Right. And the way Jared Leto reacted to that news and how angry and upset he was. Do you possibly think that Warner Brothers is, I don't know, maybe a little concerned about Pattinson's Batman, and maybe this is like a backup plan in case the Matt Reeves Batman falls on its face?
I don't know about that. I mean, we know that Warner Brothers has a history of being reactionary, right?
Yeah.
But I think that some of these moving parts have been moving for a while, right? Mm-hmm. So I don't know that necessarily that they would care about that. Jared Leto being upset, why would that matter? Jared Leto's not going to be in any upcoming projects that we know. So why would it matter to them whether or not he was upset about, being the Joker, or, why am I blanking on the guy's name? The guy that's going to play Batman, Robert Pattinson. Yeah, Pattinson. I don't know that they're necessarily worried about rocking the boat with Pattinson because it's a completely different storyline. Yeah. As far as we know, it's a standalone film. They're not really talking too much about franchise stuff. So I don't think that that's really the case. I think
personally, I'm not bothered by it. I mean, I'm a big fan of the DC lore, where I understand there are multiple universes and this and that. And I think Joker, going back to the Joker thing, I think Joker, you can make the argument is maybe that was Warner Brothers testing the waters to see how people would react to a standalone, separated, DC film.
I see what you're saying. So what you're saying is that you think that the standalone Joker was like a test of let's not do shared cinematic universe. Let's just break off and do these other standalone.
Still continue the continuity of still
continue the traditional DCEU continuity and just have these sort of Elseworld stories. Yeah. And I guess that's possible, right? That
I'm just wondering, is the general audience there yet? Do you think the general audience will understand, okay, this is a different Joker or a different Batman, this is a different blah, blah, blah? I mean, do you think we're there yet where the general audience is not going to get confused? Well, wait a second, I thought Michael Keaton was Batman. Wait a minute, what about Rob Pattinson? What about Ben Affleck? Do you think the general audience is ready for multiple takes on the same character going on at the same time?
Well, absolutely. I mean, if you really look at how the DCEU, or actually how all the DC properties across all media, how they work, I mean, there doesn't seem to really be any confusion. Like right now, there are two Flashes, right? So we've got Grant Gustin on TV. We've got Ezra Miller in the films. We've had multiple Batmen over the past, say, 30 years. with the reboots being very close to each other.
Yeah.
So I don't think that there's any threat of confusion where people are like, well, wait a second, why are there two Batman, or why are there two Jokers, or, it hasn't seemed to bother them, before now, so I don't think that that's really going to be a factor. I think what they're really trying to do is build, trying to repair, as best they can some of the flops that they've had, and try to get their bearing as far as the traditional DCEU. But I think at the same time, they're trying to build on the success of the standalone Joker, right? So you have, a film that's not necessarily a traditional comic book movie, sort of transcendent of that. So, what if you created a Batman movie that was similar to that? What if you created, down the line, let's say you did like a Superman movie or something like that was completely separate of the timeline that we know, that's maybe a little more grounded, a little more serious. So that's really what I think their plan is.
Yeah. Oh, it's exciting times we're living in.
Absolutely.
Now, what's interesting about going to an easy transition here is the rumors that we're hearing is that, I know you touched base on it earlier, but I also read somewhere that this Michael Keaton Batman is in fact the Tim Burton Batman 30 years later, ignoring the Schumacher films, which we have to get into now. Is this week we did receive the sad news of Joel Schumacher passed away at the age of 80.
Right.
Now real quick, as a lot of people who disliked Batman Forever, by the way, Batman Forever just came out 25 years ago, like last week, but much people like dislike Batman Forever and Batman and Robin, I don't put 100% blame on Schumacher, and it's just really sad that after Schumacher passed away, I really dove in and looked at his filmography, and I'm like,
right.
Wow, talk about a filmography that he had, and it's just a damn shame that in the last few years that that's the guy that ruined Batman. That's the guy that ruined Batman, but not
exactly.
But no one talks about his other great work. And again, like I said, those two particular Batman films, again, I think that was more so Warner Brothers wanting to sell toys. Yes,
I agree with that. So, and I'm glad that you bring that up, because I think that I'm probably one of the few people that does recognize that, right? So, whenever we hear the name Joel Schumacher, the very first thing that we hear is, Batman and Robin, this guy like totally ruined a great franchise, you know what I mean? And I'm no fan of that movie. Like, I think that, I think it's probably one of the worst, if not the worst comic book movie to ever come out. But I also
there are worse ones out there.
Yeah, there are. There probably are. But it's definitely down there at the bottom, right?
Yeah.
But I also acknowledge that every director has, as John Campea would say, a bad day at the office, right? So, you certainly can't discount any of this guy's successes. I mean, he gave us some of the most iconic movies of the 80s. He gave us St. Elmo's Fire and The Lost Boys.
Yep.
DC Cab. Even in the 70s, he was involved in some of the 70s hits like Car Wash and some of the older hits like that. And even past the 90s and past the early 2000s, we get films like Phone Booth. Which I
loved Phone Booth.
Fantastic movie. This guy also did a bunch of great music videos. He did videos for Seal, for Lenny Kravitz, for
Kiss by a Rose.
Right. I mean,
so I remember in 1995, that's all that was on MTV was that damn video. I mean, Batman Forever was a hot movie at the time.
It was,
and
partially because of that
video,
song.
Yeah, but like I said, that music video was all over MTV.
Right.
Being a 90s kid, that was like one of my fond memories of MTV was when it played music, and that's one part of MTV I clearly remember. I was like 8, 9, 10 years old at the time, but that's one part of MTV I clearly remember.
Right.
And that's cool that Schumacher was behind some of these iconic music videos.
Right. And and that is his real legacy, right? So when you kind of like take a look at the amount of great films and great projects that he was a part of, then you really get a sense of loss for the film community, right? So, you know, of course, it's sad when anybody passes, whether they were a good director or a bad director, or a good actor or bad actor. But he truly was one of the great ones.
Yeah, and another thing too is I never heard anyone say anything bad about working. Everyone who's worked with Schumacher has said nothing but great things.
Right.
I never heard anything negative. I didn't hear any nothing sketchy. He's treated everybody very well. Everyone that's come out and talked about Schumacher's has said nothing but good things about him. That makes me happy to hear that, you know, he wasn't difficult to work with. He didn't do anything, you know, sketchy or anything like that. He's actually a genuine person to work with, and you know, he tried. And you know, like I said, not every movie was a hit, but he tried his best. You know.
Right. You know, I mean, he, you know, for, you know, as far as, you know, 80s and 90s Hollywood and even early 2000s Hollywood, I mean, he more often than not knocked it out of the park. I mean, he was one of the great directors of his time, and he will definitely be missed, I think.
I'm going to give you 3 movies that, again, there are 3 movies that I haven't seen, but from the movies I've seen, I'm going to pick my 3 personal favorite. Starting with Phantom of the Opera. It's very, very rare. I'm not a musical guy.
Right.
I mean, there are exceptions out there, Grease and a couple others, but for the most part, I'm not into musicals. But I loved Schumacher's take on Phantom of the Opera. I thought he knocked it out of the park. There were some moments where I cried. He captured the live show, captured the emotion. Visually, I thought it was fantastic. I put that as one of my favorites. Number 2, probably. Now listen, I don't know how this film would go over nowadays, but the movie Falling Down with Michael Keaton.
Oh, yeah. Wow, yeah. I love that movie.
Whew. Talk about a disturbing movie. Borderline comical, but very disturbing. And what goes on in that movie, again, I don't think would fly in today's culture, but watch that movie. And then for my number 1 pick, A Time to Kill with Matthew McConaughey and Sam Jackson.
He did that one? I wasn't aware. Wow.
Yes. Matthew McConaughey credits Joel Schumacher to launching his career.
Right.
For those who have not seen this movie, I say to you this. You probably heard of it at some point. Dave Chappelle made it famous with the Sam Jackson beer skit. Yes, they deserve to die, and I hope they burn in hell. Now listen, I saw the Dave Chappelle skit long before I watched that movie.
Right.
And I'm watching that movie, and when that line came out of Sam Jackson's mouth in the courtroom, I bursted out laughing. I'm like, that's where that came from.
So you didn't realize that's where that came from at the time?
I did not realize that.
Oh, wow.
Again, I saw that movie after the Chappelle shit was I was in high school when that came out, so I didn't see that movie slipped past me.
Sure.
And I finally watched it not that long ago. I maybe saw it maybe 4 or 5 years ago.
Okay.
And like I said, I wasn't ready for it, but as soon as that part in the courtroom came, and you know, Sam Jackson's getting interrogated by Kevin Spacey's character there, and he's just like, yes, they deserve to die. And I'm just like, wait, what?
Right.
That's okay. That's where that came from. So
yeah, and
I have to, but I mean, outside that one moment that where, you know, of course you're gonna laugh because Chappelle made it more famous, but outside that one part of the movie, it's a very emotional driven, very disturbing movie, and it's done so well. Gotta be one of McConaughey's best performances. It really is.
Right.
And again, I did not realize Schumacher directed that movie till, you know, just the other day, you know.
Well, knowing that, I got to revise my top 3, right? So, so that's definitely up there because that shows how much homework I did on the guy. So yeah, so I had no idea that he did that, and that actually is, you know, a favorite of mine. You know, I've seen that. Well, I watched it when it first came out in the theater, and then, you know, over the years when it's been on cable and, you know, when I come across it on TV, I'll stop and I'll watch it again. So that's definitely one. And then the two movies that I mentioned from the 80s, I think are they remain my favorites of his. So St. Elmo's Fire, you know, and the Lost Boys, you know, anybody who was, you know, a teen or a preteen at that time. I know that you're probably a little too young to remember this.
I was
or maybe
born in the
weren't
80s,
around.
so I have to go back and watch those.
Yeah. So, you know, if you know, I was 13 when that movie came out, and, you know, it was the movie to see that summer. And, you know, everything from the cast to the story to the soundtrack, everything about that kind of came together in a very big and very 80s way. And at the same time, there's something very timeless about it. So, you know, here we are, you know, 35, 36 years later, you can pop that movie in still and enjoy it, you know, for what it is without, you know, thinking that it's cheesy or, you know, over the top or whatever. It's sort of the epitome of what a good 80s kind of action / horror / fantasy movie would be. So I think that's 3.
Okay. Yeah, and like I said, just to reiterate to everybody is, again, he's done a lot more movies than you realize, not just Batman and Robin. He's done a lot more than you realize. And as far as I'm concerned, it's never too late to go back and watch the films if you haven't already.
I highly recommend you do that. I might do that myself this week.
There we go.
So, speaking of, you know, kicking back and watching, you know, movies and watching TV and stuff like that, you and I have been talking about season 2 of Doom Patrol.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, for those who don't realize, season 2 of this show premiered a few days ago on HBO Max and DC Universe.
Yep.
I'm a huge fan of the show. I've been watching it since it premiered. And even before that, growing up, I was a fan of the comics. So I feel a certain way about this series in general. And I feel a certain way about season 2. But before I kind of get into that, I kind of wanted to kind of see what you thought of it.
No, I got through one episode on Thursday night when it premiered. And I mean, I may have made the mistake. I mean, I watched Doom Patrol from start to finish, but the thing is, I probably should have at least rewatched it or at least watched a recap. It just seemed, I think, I'm not gonna lie, I really wasn't blown away by the first season premiere.
Right.
Again, some of the decisions on the show, for example, I'm a huge Cyborg fan, but I still feel that Cyborg is out of place in the show.
Right.
I really felt he would be more appropriate in the Titans. Now, this is the same universe as Titans. I feel like it would. I mean, we already have a robotic character. I don't know why we have to have 2 robotic characters. I'm just scratching my head a little bit. I mean, it's still a fascinating watch though, because it's very adult oriented. It's very dark and somber, and the Chief's daughter definitely adds a new element to the show, but it's still, I think it was a kind of a slow launch to start.
Right. You know, and I kind of agree with that. So I'm a huge fan of season 1. I mean, I was in from the first scene or the first episode.
And you watched the Titans episode that had Doom Patrol in it.
That introduced them.
Okay.
And, which, by the way, you know, I'm not a tremendous fan of the show Titans, but that particular episode I loved. And that's what kind of got me excited for the show. So when I started watching the show, I got hooked on it right away. I was very excited to watch this season. And I've gotten maybe 3 episodes in, and I have to say it's not doing it for me. There's a lot missing, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I was thinking about this earlier today, like, why does the pacing of this and the energy of this season feel so different? And I think I think it boils down to the tone, the overall tone of the season. You know, in season 1, you know, the whole thing is narrated by the main You know?
Oh my God, you're right. I did not. That's one thing. Yeah, it doesn't have that narration. You're right.
Right, and he's noticeably absent here. Now, I know that they defeated him at the end of season 1, and I'm not going to give any spoilers as far as where he is now, but his absence kind of strips the show of some energy, you know, and it kind of makes it a lot less interesting to watch, you know. I'm not big on the main character for this season. Just in general, I just don't think he's like a very interesting, character to kind of, you know, he's not a very interesting nemesis in general. It's just kind of seems kind of silly, you know. And I know that the show, the point of the show is that, you know, it's embracing the silliness of the comic, right? And it's embracing the sort of satire of superhero fare, right? But there's just something about this particular villain, this particular rogue, that I'm just like, it's not that interesting yet. Hopefully it gets better in subsequent episodes. But the one or two episodes that I've watched so far have just really not pulled me in the way that I expected.
Yeah, I mean, we can only hope that the show gets better. You know, it's still, like I said, it's still a kind of a fascinating watch. And the thing, and then for those who are not into Doom Patrol, or maybe they're not familiar with the characters, that's okay. I think one of the big drawing points of the show is this is the show that got Brendan Fraser out of retirement.
Right.
So if any of those who have been wondering what Brendan Fraser's been up to, or miss Brendan Fraser, should probably watch the show, because I think he's one of the big moving parts of the show. Right.
I mean, and that is one piece of this series that I still really enjoy, right? Yeah. So, you know, the big part of his character, for anybody who hasn't watched it, he plays a character named Cliff Steele, who you know, he was in an accident and, you know, lost his family and lost his own body. And the way that he's kind of saved is his brain is put into a robot. So he has
and it's well done. It's half practical and half CGI. It's actually It's really cool how they do it.
It's pretty well done, and it's pretty close to the representation in the comic, in the source material. I really like his portrayal, and I like where they're going with this character as far as, you know, his inability to physically feel things sort of exacerbates his ability to emotionally feel things. Yeah. And I think that is one of the most interesting parts of the show. You know, it's really, if I really think about it, it's probably the only thing that is really keeping me interested, because I kind of want to see, you know, where things end up, you know, like he's, you know, he finds out, you know, I don't want to give any spoilers or anything like that, but he finds out a huge piece of information, he acts on it, and I kind of want to see where things end up with that.
Absolutely. All right, so you know, it's getting close to wrapping this up, but there's I figure we'll squeeze one more topic in, and again, just to reiterate, movies have been shifted again a couple of weeks, but we did get a couple of trailers, and one of them being the new trailer for The King's Man. Now, for those who are not familiar with The King's Man is the third Kingsman movie, but it's a prequel. And now the first Kingsman movie is fantastic. It's peak Matthew Vaughn right there. If you're a fan of X-Men First Class, you should definitely check out Kingsman. Then the second one came out, and man, did it bring the franchise down. The second one definitely lacks the charm of the first film. There are a couple funny. I mean, I thought Elton John was pretty funny in it, but it's just a tad bit out of place. And then when we found out, forgive me, I can't think the actor's name, but the main character of Kingsman said that he's not coming back for the third movie. So I'm like,
Taron Egerton.
Okay, yes, and I'm like, well, what is he gonna do? what are they going to do without him? But then we found out then we saw the third movie is going to be a prequel. And then lo and behold, we saw that first trailer with, and I'm a huge Black Sabbath fan. We got that trailer, that the World War I setting, and they had a remix of War Pigs. Yes. And I got hyped up. I'm like, listen, I wasn't asking for a third Kingsman movie or a prequel, but when I saw that first trailer, I was amped up. And now the newest trailer just premiered this week, and this time they keeping the theme with a classic rock song being remixed. Edwin Starr's War, which was made famous, 30 years later on Rush Hour. They remixed War in the trailer, and it was like, oh my god, and I'm like, I'm getting all excited, and they're showing the fights and the plot, and I'm just like, oh my god, this movie looks great. And they said it's gonna be September, and I am excited.
Yeah, I was excited. So here's my take, right? Because, like you said, there are a stream of movies, a plethora of movies that were intended to come out, a few months ago, sometime last year, sometime 2 years ago. Kingsman was one of those films, right? So its initial release was November of 2019. When they came out with the initial trailer for it, I was 100% in, because the tone of it was so different than the rest of the Kingsman franchise. In fact, that teaser trailer didn't give you any indication of what it was until the very end. It was like this serious period piece. That's all you found out, was that it was it's based in World War I.
Funny thing is, with 1917, recently just came out, and now here we have this Kingsman prequel.
Yeah, I mean, it's becoming right. It's becoming a pretty popular trope. Like, even going back a couple of years with Wonder Woman, right?
Yeah,
it's based in World War I. But that initial trailer, it just basically looked like a World War I epic, and it looked like something that was a little darker and a little more serious in tone. And then you don't find out until the very end, that last scene where they're right in front of the Kingsman tailor shop, and you're like, oh wow, this is like an origin story. I'm 100% in on this, right? So I was excited for it to come out at the end of last year. Then they came out with the second trailer. It kind of gave a little bit more backstory, introduced Rasputin. It still looked a little bit over the top, but I was like, okay, well, it's a Kingsman movie. The first one was over the top, but it was great.
Yeah.
Now, the most recent trailer, it's even more, in my opinion, it's even more campy than the first two, and it makes it feel like, okay, this is basically the Golden Circle, but set in 1917. So is it going to be that film? I don't know, but it definitely made me less excited. It kind of like deflated my hopes for the film. I mean, I'm still going to go watch it when it comes out, but am I as amped about it as I was, in fall of last year? Definitely not.
All right. I disagree, but I think part of me is it's just because I'm so starved right now for new releases. I think we all can agree to that. But, and again, the time from the very first trailer to the trailer we just got, it was months and months and months in between. So I think this movie was just a reminder. Hey, there's a third Kingsman movie prequel coming out, and I guess I think I just kind of forgot about the first trailer, and then this one kind of got me excited again.
No, I'm with you. I'm with you on that. And like I said, I mean, these are kind of, I guess you could say they're unfounded fears, right? So, number one, I still have a very bad taste in my mouth from The Golden Circle. I really did not like that film.
Yeah, no, I agree.
That, and then if you think about, the timeline of, the Suicide Squad movie, how the original trailer was very serious, very dark, super interesting. You gotta feel that this was going to be a special type of film, and then the second trailer came out and it was absolutely ridiculous, and then the film turned out to be ridiculous, right? So, and I know that you kind of feel a different way about it, but I really didn't like that movie very much. I'm not
going to defend the movie, but it's just
sure.
I enjoyed it.
I'm interested in seeing the Ayer cut. I'll say that much. I'm interested in seeing what his cut looks like.
Yeah, absolutely.
I have a feeling it's going to be similar to what that trailer gave us, right?
Yeah.
And I kind of feel like, my worry with Kingsman is that we're going to get a repeat of that. So maybe there was a cut that was, super grounded and went a specific.
Well, something just dawned on me. Kingsman was a 20th Century Fox movie,
right?
And then the Disney merger happened.
That's right.
I'm wondering because that they filmed that movie long before the merger, so that does raise some questions. With now Disney having their hands on it,
well, I mean, just because Disney has their hands on it doesn't necessarily mean they're going to make it family friendly or they're going to make it. They're going to kind of censor it or anything like that.
Yeah.
It's not like it's part of the MCU.
Yeah.
I don't really think that.
Yeah, but remember the first two movies were 20th Century Fox.
Sure.
So I'm wondering, like, is this new movie still going to be in the tone? That not dark, but like, well, I'll put it to you this way: the first two movies, especially the second one, were definitely not family friendly whatsoever, and. And if there's any of those elements in this third movie, like that would not fly by Disney. Just saying.
Well, again, I mean, Disney has put out, content that isn't necessarily on par with some of their family friendly properties, you know, and I think that, with properties like this one and like Deadpool and things like that, I think they're going to remain on brand. I think that it makes
that
more
remains
sense
to be
for them.
seen.
I could be 100% wrong, but I think that, if they're really looking at the numbers and looking at what makes those movies hit movies, it would be suicide for them to just kind of switch gears and be like, okay, well, we want to make it more PG so that like kids can go to these movies, because number one, like small kids aren't identifying with these characters to begin with. There's no Kingsman cartoon, right? There's no like toys of Eggsy or any of the other characters are in that franchise. So I don't really see them doing anything like that. My worry is more that it's going to be a bad edit. I have a feeling that they went back, that they used this extra time to kind of go back to the drawing board and recut certain things and change the tone of the film. And I think if they've done that, then I think they do a disservice to the franchise and what this prequel could be. Yeah. I'm hoping that's not the case, but in the back of my mind, that's kind of what I think is going on.
Oh, we'll have to wait and see. Well, again, they're saying September is what the trailer said, but that could change in a drop of a hat, as you know, everything going on in the world right now. My dog's waking up right now. There he goes. Okay, so I guess that's the sign. I think my dog waking up is the sign.
Hey, wasn't he in Call of the Wild?
Yes. Well, that was Buck. This is Lars.
Right.
Okay, well, I guess we'll wrap this up. So before we go, we ask you to please like, comment, ring that bell, spread this shit like syphilis. So to you, I say, from Louisville to Syracuse, to our friends and fans around the world at NerdCage Live, enjoy life, stay safe, and good night.
Sayonara.
Ooh, trying to get out of the NerdCage, are ya? Well, before you go, hit that subscribe button. And if you're really intrigued, ring that bell. Thank you for dropping by. Until next time, tell everyone you know about NerdCage Live!